Hi everyone, Liz Klimek here, Planetarium Manager at the South Carolina State Museum. Well, it's time to talk planets again, as we have one up in the evening sky and a couple up in the morning sky. So to see which particular planets are making an appearance this weekend, let's head on over to this upcoming Saturday, April 10th at 9 p.m. We're looking directly south from Columbia, South Carolina, where up in the southwest we have the red planet Mars, still hanging out with the winter constellations of Taurus the Bull, Orion the Hunter, and Orion's two hunting dogs. Mars is currently nestled between the horns of Taurus the Bull. Now, I don't know about you, but I've gotten quite used to Mars being up in the evening sky. It's been up in the evening sky for quite some time now, but definitely don't take that for granted because night by night, Mars is inching towards the west little by little, and by early to midsummer, it will no longer be visible after sunset for a while. So definitely take advantage of upcoming clear nights to go out and add some Mars gazing to your stargazing. But while we're looking at Mars here, this is an excellent time to give you a little bit of an update on some exciting things happening there. So as you may have heard, NASA landed on February 18th another rover on Mars called Perseverance, or Percy for short. Percy's been busy taking pictures, calibrating its instruments, and doing a little bit of driving. As you can see, there are those tracks in the Martian soil there from where it's driven. But before Percy goes into full exploration mode, it has one very important task to complete, and that is to help out its buddy, the Ingenuity helicopter, conduct its first test flight. So the first thing that we had to do was identify a good place for that test flight. And this is it. It's a relatively flat bit of terrain. There's a little bit of texture to it, but that's okay. It's pretty flat. There are no obvious hazards. And what Percy has done is it has actually already dropped off the helicopter on that terrain. So in this image, this is part of a sequence where the helicopter was being deployed from the underside of the rover. Here it's still attached to the rover, just hovering a few inches above the surface. But since this image was taken, Percy has released the helicopter and driven away. And then Percy took this image with its rear cameras of Ingenuity all on its own. So now that it's on its own, it has to power itself, keep itself warm. It does have solar panels up here to recharge its batteries. It's already survived some bitter, bitter cold Martian nights where it gets down to minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit. So far, so good. But it's going through some pre-flight checkouts right now, and if all goes well, it will conduct its first test flight this upcoming weekend on April 11th. However, if anything doesn't look quite right, NASA engineers will bump that date a little bit back. And that's just because this is the first time we're ever flying a craft like this. We really only have one shot, so we really want to make sure that all of the conditions are ideal and everything is working properly before we give Ingenuity the green light to go. Once it does get the green light, Percy will be taking video of the whole thing. It's currently moving towards a good vantage point, a good lookout point, from which it can take pictures and video of those test flights. So fingers crossed that things go well, and we'll get to see video by early next week. But if you want to see planets other than Mars, you are going to have to either stay up all night or get up really early. I like to just stay up all night. So what I like to do is just step us forward through time here so you can kind of see how the sky changes as time moves forward. So here we are, we're technically now in the early morning hours of Sunday, April 11th. And I am going to head towards 5:30 in the morning. So I'll nudge us forward just a little bit more. And this is going to be the last little bit of nighttime before morning twilight hits. I'll pan our gaze over towards the east-southeast, where we have the planets Jupiter and Saturn. Now, they're both bright enough to see with your own eyes, but they are kind of low on the horizon. If you wait longer and go forward in time, they'll get higher up in the sky, but that rising sun will be right behind it, and the light of that rising sun will drown them out, as well as the other objects in the sky like the stars, and hence make these planets difficult to see. So right now, the best time to see them really is before morning twilight hits, about an hour and a half before sunrise. And if you can get a good clear view of the eastern horizon, you might be able to spot them. Now, these two planets are similar in many ways. They are both considered to be gas giants, which means they are made of mostly hydrogen and helium gas. Although strange things start to happen to that gas deep down inside the planets, where the extreme pressure and high temperature combine to compress that gas into a weird state of matter. For example, hydrogen is not a metal, but under the conditions inside these planets, hydrogen becomes metallic, meaning that it conducts electricity, which is thought to be responsible for these planets' magnetic fields, which are in turn responsible for their spectacular aurora, or northern lights. Both of these planets also have rings. Saturn's are the most well-known. They're the biggest and the brightest, but Jupiter has them as well. You can't see them from Earth. They're made of dim, dark, fine dust particles, but you can see them from some of the spacecraft that have flown by. For example, these are Jupiter's rings as seen from the New Horizons spacecraft as it was on its way out to Pluto a few years back. Both of these planets have dozens and dozens of moons. They come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes, and they have lots of different properties. For example, Io over here is covered in volcanoes. Europa over here is covered in icy crust with an ocean inside. And these are just 4 of Jupiter's moons. They're called the Galileans. They're the brightest moons of Jupiter. You can see them in a telescope. They look like points of light going around and around the planet Jupiter. But just by looking at this small sample, you can see how crazy different they all are. We could easily devote an entire episode to just one of these moons or a handful of these moons. And, maybe we should do that. We haven't talked about moons other than our own in a while. So if you have a favorite moon other than our own that you'd like us to feature, leave that in the comments and we'll see. Both of these planets have some crazy storms, some of them big enough for entire planets to fit inside of. The most iconic storm is this one on Jupiter, the Great Red Spot. It's been raging for a few hundred years. And actually, over the past few decades, we have observed it changing. So it might not be a permanent feature, and it probably is not. So who knows when it'll finally dissipate, but it has been changing, it's been shrinking, and as it's been shrinking, it's been getting rounder and the color has been intensifying. So all of that is still a mystery waiting to be solved. This is Jupiter as it appeared last August, in August of 2020. And this was taken by the Hubble Space Telescope. So this is a pretty recent picture of Jupiter. Now, we haven't talked about Jupiter and Saturn very much recently, and that's mostly because Mars has been getting all of the spotlight due to the recently landed rover. And that's not a bad thing. Percy's doing some awesome things, and Ingenuity is about to. But Mars isn't the only planet that has one of our robotic explorers visiting right now. Jupiter has one too. It's a spacecraft called Juno, and it's been in orbit around Jupiter since 2016, trying to better understand what's beneath those beautiful turbulent clouds that we see. The main part of Juno's mission will end this upcoming July. However, the spacecraft still seems to be working great, and it has more to give, so why stop? Happily, the mission has recently been extended through 2025 and will expand to explore more of the Jupiter system. So not just the planet itself, but also its rings and some of its moons. Plans are afoot to fly by 3 of the Galilean moons, in particular Io, Europa, and Ganymede here. And plans are also in place to try to dive in and out of Jupiter's ring system. This is something that the Cassini spacecraft did with Saturn's rings before the end of its mission in late 2017. So Cassini dove in and out of these rings right here. And while Jupiter's rings are not as spectacular looking as Saturn's rings, it's still quite exciting because we've just never done this before. We've never dived in and out of Jupiter's rings specifically. So I hope this gives you more of an appreciation of these 2 planets. And I hope that you'll be able to go out early in the morning or stay up late to see them, or perhaps catch Mars up in the evening sky. But thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're not aware, the Planetarium at the State Museum is back open, and we still have COVID safety protocols in place. If you're interested in what we currently have to offer, be sure to check out our show schedule at scmuseum.org. Please click below to like, subscribe, and comment. That helps us out a lot, so thank you. And as always, take care of yourselves and each other, and I hope to see you back here next time.